for joining us today, and welcome to my sewing room. I have been so excited about this show today. The theme of the show is Crazy Patch, my favorite form of quilting. Now you see, Crazy Patch may be my favorite form of quilting because it truly is the Victorian type of quilting. We don't limit Crazy Patch to just quilts though. Oh my goodness, we're expanding Crazy Patch so much further than quilts. Perhaps another reason I love Crazy Patch so much is that we can use lots of silk ribbon embroidery to embellish the seams. I have a little duck to introduce you to right now. This is a Crazy Patch duck. You know where I got all the things to make this duck? From scraps. I had a sample book of some braids that I'd had in the shop years ago, so I used these braids. I had some buttons, which I had in my button box, all these wonderful big buttons with fake jewels in them. I had lots of braid, and I had some wonderful gold metallic thread for my sewing machine. So, here are all the machine stitching, and this is what I did with my scraps that I had left over from my shop. This is a beautiful jacket of Crazy Patch. Absolutely wonderful colors, lined in the water-stained taffeta. Here are some little buttons over here on the side. Absolutely all of the embellishment on this jacket is done on a sewing machine. This is something really sweet, I think, on the sleeve. Do you see the braid, the drapery braid that comes right down here? Isn't that pretty? All of that red and green braid. The back of this jacket is perfectly beautiful too, with more of the drapery braid and 3 little ribbon rosettes, silk ribbon rosettes right over here. An absolutely wonderful treasure and such high fashion also. This Crazy Patch vest has just some cute and wonderful things, including, I think this may be my very favorite design right here. It's a spider web and a spider, and here's a silk ribbon rose, lots of buttons, lots of motifs, and the traditional heirloom party dress done in a tie silk, beautiful dark antique laces, lovely pieces of tie silk and jewel colors on the neckline. This is the traditional little dress that I would usually think about in being in white batiste. But isn't it wonderful done in Crazy Patch? Absolutely my favorite form of quilting. I have some techniques to show you how easy it is to do your own Crazy Patch. Crazy Patch begins with a base fabric such as muslin and some pieces of your absolute favorite colors of other types of fabrics. I've started with a 5-sided piece of fabric, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the middle of my Crazy Patch. I have taken another piece, any size will do, placed it on top of the printed fabric, and I've stitched from side to side, and then I press it open. That's step number 2. Here I have taken a piece of pink fabric, put it over the first 2 pieces of fabric, stitched it, and then I come back here and trim away, as you can see, I trim away the blue fabric, I press it open. I've done the same thing with a piece of green fabric. Place it down face to face, stitch from underside fabric to underside fabric, trim away the blue fabric, open it up and press it, and that is the way I build my Crazy Patch, going around the different sides of that original 5-sided piece of fabric. Today I have invited Kathy McMakin, construction editor of So Beautiful magazine, to be my guest. Kathy has planned the most wonderful Christmas stocking for you. Hi Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. It's great to be here. Today we are going to do a Christmas stocking, and as you can see, we have traced off the Christmas stocking onto a piece of muslin, and we have a 5-sided figure, just as Martha told you before, right in the center of our traced off stocking. You start with that 5-sided piece, and then the next thing you need to do is add another piece, and we're going to work in a clockwise direction because it just looks better when you work in a clockwise direction, and it keeps it from looking like strip quilting. So let's sew this. We're going to start at the beginning of the under piece, and we're going to sew to the end of the under piece.
Kathy, did you choose the taffeta fabrics for any particular reason, or the shiny fabrics?
Martha, we just really like the look of Crazy Patch when it's done with these types of fabrics.
It looks very Victorian to me, using those wonderful, shiny, fabulous fabrics.
It really does.
Especially for a Christmas stocking.
That's exactly right. Okay, and then once you have that sewn, you are going to fold this piece back, and then you can press it. So it works very nicely. Let's see. Then we have our next piece, and if you'll notice, this is the piece that we just sewed, but if you'll notice, you can't see the stitching here. That's because we have used a nylon or invisible thread, and then we'll just press this back, and that's what we've already shown you. Then we'll get ready to do the red piece, but before we do the red piece, if you'll notice, when we lay the red piece on, we can stitch it, and then we'll trim away the excess yellow piece before we press this back. Ooh, and then we can press this back. Yes, you can see it just come to life. Then we have the turquoise piece we're going to place down here. We'll sew it in. We'll press it back this way. And then next, and as you can see, we are working in a clockwise directions, just as we've told you before. Then we'll add this beautiful piece of rose water-stained taffeta. We stitch it in place. Then don't forget to trim away your excess of your under pieces, and then you press it in place. And then if you want to add an accent of some kind, like a cuff of the stocking in a different color or a solid color so it will accent that particular direction, then we'll just add a whole solid piece up here at the top. And we can stitch that, and then it will look like this. And as you can see, we have finished off our whole stocking, and we have a piece that's stuck in down here at the bottom because we want to accentuate this part down here because it's the heel of the stocking, and sometimes you'll end up with Crazy Patch with a place that you just can't fit a scrap into. And the easiest way to fit one in there is just to take a piece of fabric and fold back the corners, and then you can take it and place it in the direction that you would like for it to be placed on your fabric, and then we can just top stitch on this, or we can use a decorative stitch of some kind, and we can go right over the edges of this, and it will just look beautiful when you finish.
Kathy, it looks to me like this is just ready for all of the silk ribbon embroidery embellishment.
You're exactly right,
Maybe
Martha.
A name written across the top and those wonderful alphabets on the sewing machine.
That's exactly right.
I have some Christmas stockings over here. This one is made out of new fabrics. Both of these Christmas stockings are made out of very old Crazy Patch. As a matter of fact, the Crazy Patch quilts were almost completely destroyed. But never mind, you can still buy pieces in an antique store that are almost completely destroyed. Take the pieces that are still good and turn them into something lovely. Embellishing Crazy Patch may be the most wonderful part of Crazy Patch. I would look at the top of this stocking, and in a beautiful gold metallic thread using the built-in monograms in your sewing machine is the word Kathy. A little piece of lace comes right in next over these pieces. Another little piece of lace is curved. I've used pearls all the way around the edge. I think that your imagination, just the sky, is the limit on what you can do to embellish Crazy Patch. I now have a little bit different form of Crazy Patch to show you in our Heirloom Quilt Square of the week. My quilt square for today uses a wonderful technique that I will call mock Heirloom Crazy Patch. I want you to look at this particular square. I've taken the batiste square, as I've used on all of the quilt squares, simply stretched pieces of lace, Swiss embroidery, a little bit of fringe down here, simply stretched them across and used wonderful decorative wing needle stitches from my sewing machine. Here is how this particular square begins. I take a square, and I have lots of fun just taking bits and pieces. By the way, this is another way to use all of those little scraps that you really do not know what to do with. Save them and make a wonderful heirloom quilt out of them. You see, you pin it, you press it, and you just put anything anywhere you want, and then use those beautiful wing needle stitches on your sewing machine or remember, you can just use zigzag also. I have a little sample here to show you. This shows what happens when you do real crazy patch using pastel. In this case, these are all shades of ecru. You see, you zigzag, don't zigzag, you straight stitch, I'm sorry, you zigzag the other on. You straight stitch, fold it back, put another piece on, all of these being in shades of ecru, straight stitch, fold it back and trim, and then the final look. This is what I call heirloom crazy patch. It's when it's true crazy patch underneath, then using lovely embroideries and trims, a little silk ribbon rosebud over here. I've just put everything literally but the kitchen sink in trimming this beautiful heirloom crazy patch. I am so excited about our doll dress for today. You just wait until you see our doll dressed in crazy patch and silk ribbon embroidery. You are going to love our doll dress for today. This little dress is made out of a green taffeta, crazy patch of taffeta and little pieces of velvet ribbon. The trims are so precious on this doll dress. A little bit of lace stitched around. These are some machine embroidery trims. Here is a little silk ribbon embroidery bow, a little silk ribbon embroidery flower made with French knots or colonial knots, I can't really tell which. Look at the little spider web and the little spider up here in this particular area. The treatment I'm going to show you how to do today, I'd like for you to look down at the hem. Do you see this black ribbon that's ruched along the hem? She also has this same ribbon ruching trim on her sleeves. This is very easy to make and very elegant. Ribbon ruching starts, in this case on this board, I'm using a wide silk ribbon. Now if the ribbon is wide enough, I can use the gathering foot on my sewing machine. If it isn't, now let's see, when you use the gathering foot on the sewing machine, here's what happens. The gathers don't slip. It's absolutely wonderful and easy to use. However, if you can't use the gathering foot or don't have one, simply run a row of gathering threads on your sewing machine, in other words, straight stitching right down the middle, and then pull the thread, and you can gather your ribbon just as easily, well, not just as easily, but just as prettily as with the gathering foot. The hem on this dress is very interesting. I have serged the bottom, folded it up, straight stitched the hem in, and then the ruching, I put the ruching already gathered right down on top of the hem and simply straight stitch right through the ruching. Silk ribbon embroidery and crazy patch go hand in hand. We have an exciting project for you next, showing you how to use more silk ribbon embroidery stitches. I am so pleased today to have as my guest Kathy Brower, who is the embroidery editor for So Beautiful magazine. Welcome to the show, Kathy.
Thanks, Martha.
And what do you have for us in the wonderful silk ribbon area today, Kathy?
Well, Martha, today I've got something really appropriate, and it's called the Featherstitch, and it's to embellish all of our crazy patch gifts and pillows and stockings. I'd like to start by showing our viewers some of the beautiful samples we have today. This feather stitching that runs along this seam of the crazy patch is actually done in floss, but it's still just as beautiful in silk ribbon. And as you can see, as I move this over, we have beautiful silk ribbon poinsettias made with the Japanese ribbon stitch like I showed you before, and all kinds of silk ribbon embellishments along the seam lines here.
That is the cutest little stocking. It's shaped like a boot.
Yes, it's wonderful for the holidays, and it makes a great gift too. This is a beautiful vest that has been made, and here we have feather stitch used in a different way. It's almost like a stem with beautiful silk ribbon flowers and leaves and more Japanese ribbon stitches here, and it just flows beautifully along this line of our crazy patch vest, and there's also more beautiful crazy patch embellishments along here with beautiful silk ribbon and gold threads. So let me move on.
Kathy, I certainly can understand why everybody wants to learn how to do silk ribbon embroidery.
Yes, it's really simple. I think with this feather stitch, it takes just a little practice, and I would start out by drawing this template on to your fabric first, just to practice on a scrap piece. It's really quite simple to do, but it takes a little getting the hang of. I'm going to start here on this big template. You'll start with your needle coming up in the A point, then you'll go down in the B point and back up in the C. And as you can see here, as you move along down your feather stitching, you'll have little triangles. It's basically moving in a triangle. And all of your A points will line up and all of your B points and your C points. I'm going to start now and show you basically how this is done. I'm using a 2mm silk ribbon. You also want to kind of guide your ribbon too. I came up in the A point, I'm going back down in B, I'm going to come up in C, and I'm going to cross over that. Do you see where I crossed over my silk ribbon? See,
oh, Kathy, that is so beautiful and so easy.
It is easy. I think my grandmother would have called this chicken scratch, but
I love it.
because it makes little chicken feet. But I think since this is in heirloom embroidery, we won't call it chicken scratch.
Sounds like a cute name.
Yes. Then you'll move over to the other side, and you'll come up there. You'll pass it over your ribbon, as I've done here. And Martha, simply to end this, you'll simply pull your ribbon down back into the fabric, pull it down, and it anchors that last stitch, and you'll tie a knot on the back. On this particular one, we've chosen to make 2 stitches before we started in the other direction. So with feather stitching, you can either do a straight line, or you can veer it off as many times as you want to before you start in the other direction. And you can add beautiful glass beads to the ends of each one of these, or beautiful rosebuds. It's a really fun stitch to do.
Well, Kathy, it seems to me as if I can do feather stitch, and I certainly hope that our viewers have learned how to do feather stitch silk ribbon embroidery like we had on these absolutely beautiful garments today with lots and lots of silk ribbon. I have something else exciting for you that is in the area of Crazy Patch, of course, and silk ribbon, and it's an heirloom Crazy Patch graduation Christmas stocking. Some of my happiest childhood memories center around my mother's making beautiful things for me at the sewing machine. Since heirloom sewing is all about making memories, I have the most exciting craft for you today. This Christmas stocking I made, and it's Joanna's graduation stocking. She graduated this year. Now, I started with her name, and this was all just free motion with the sewing machine and a straight stitch, Joanna Pullen, and her birth date. I chose to take school events such as Huntsville High School and her dancing and School of Dance, Randolph School, NCA All-American Cheerleader, things about her school life which were really important to her and recorded on this stocking. Now, several interesting techniques. Here, I took a piece of translucent fabric and simply freehanded her name, Joanna Pullen, on this see-through fabric. Then I can put another piece of fabric underneath it, and there is my Crazy Patch fabric for that particular section. You can just use one of the permanent marking pens, one of the paint pens, and write Joanna Pullen, or whatever name you would like, and use this as your fabric. You do not have to stitch it in at all. Around the edge of this beautiful Crazy Patch stocking, I have used pearls bought from the store, with the little seam allowance already on them. Now when I curve my pearls, as you can see, the seam allowance needs to be trimmed just like curving any trim. So they go on the edge and stitch them right in your seam. Lots of buttons. There's even a cute little telephone button here, which certainly is indicative of a teenager in high school, if you remember correctly. Buttons all over, beautiful silk ribbon embroidery, stitching out of the sewing machine, tatting, put anything in the world you want to, but this is something for Joanna for tomorrow and tomorrow. This is her graduation stocking. I have a lovely home decorating idea for you, 2 beautiful Crazy Patch pillows. I could not resist introducing you to another member of my heirloom zoo. This is Mrs. Crazy Patch Goose, with her sweet little wing done in lace. I went to my attic to bring down to show to you the pillow, which was the inspiration for our home decorating segment today. This little pillow is a little bit worn out, but as you can see, this is where I get ideas for a lot of the projects that I have brought to you on the show. From this little pillow, we came up with this little pillow. A wonderful example of crazy patch. Can you see how the two are somewhat similar? The little worn out pillow and the new crazy patch pillow done with wonderful colors of velveteen, lots of lace. I think they're very similar and yet very different. I made a piece of crazy patch. You can see I still have the muslin, and since our pillow from the attic was turned a little bit catty-cornered, I simply turned the square piece of crazy patch in this direction, trimmed it with laces. Let me bring this one back over here. I turned it that way, stitched it down to my base fabric, trimmed it with laces, lots of machine stitching. This is the perfect place, crazy patch is the perfect place to use all of those machine stitches, the little bows, the little tulips. This has lots of wonderful buttons sewn on it. This is even an antique pettipoint motif, probably one I found in an antique store somewhere. Lace was used on the edge, and those big wonderful stitches on the sewing machine and the lovely lace trimmed on the edge, all gathered up and pretty. I love to collect antique clothes in addition to antique pillows. Let's take a trip to my attic and I'll share some of these treasures with you. I am so glad you could come to my attic today. I have some really beautiful things to show you. This antique piece of crazy patch, looks like it just didn't get finished, has wonderful embroidery on it, velvets, taffetas. It looks as if it is a painted flower in the middle on that velvet. My first little dress for you, I was absolutely sure winked at me when I saw this in an antique store. The little tabs on the front have tuck after tuck after tuck after tuck, beautiful folded tucks. This same little tab that is on the front, there's one on each sleeve. Beautiful mitered bodice, the wonderful little tabs, sweet little long sleeves, and on the skirt, very simple fancy band on the skirt. Isn't that a precious dress? Bed jackets were very much the vogue many years ago. This bed jacket is truly beautiful. There are released tucks on the collar, beading, and even the old antique silk ribbon is still there, not too faded. I think the bottom of this little jacket is especially pretty. It has little diamond-shaped tabs and this magnificent wide gathered lace. Laces like this are hard to find today, but they are still available and are still being made. The front of the little jacket, absolutely beautiful again, fastens at the top, comes down, and this beautiful diamond treatment with, actually it's mitering, and the beautiful antique silk ribbon is repeated all the way around the front. Look at all of the lace on that gorgeous jacket. I have a sweet and simple little dress here, absolutely precious. This dress could be made on a very limited budget. As a matter of fact, if I did not use Swiss batiste and used a poly cotton batiste, I could make this little dress for about $8. Lovely double needle pin tucks, which don't cost much money at all. A sweet little sleeve, precious little trim, just a little ruffle, no lace, and you see this ruffles don't cost much money, just a little time. Down on the skirt of this dress, again, utter simplicity. Sometimes the most simple is the most beautiful. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 sets of 2 little folded tucks, and this mother did not have any lace, probably, or maybe just chose to make this a very plain little dress. You see the ruffle on the bottom is simply a folded piece of fabric gathered up. Thank you for joining me today. I certainly hope that we will see you next time in my sewing room.